The Great Hall of Concord shone like a star in the void, its crystalline walls refracting the light of a nearby nebula. Delegates from across the galaxy filled the chamber, their voices a chaotic symphony of languages and frequencies. The Council of Ten, the oldest and most powerful governing body in the known universe, presided over the assembly. Each member sat on a raised dais, their forms obscured by shimmering veils of energy, symbolizing their impartiality and collective power. At the center of the chamber, a single human stood. Ambassador Elara Thorne was young by human standards, but her gaze carried the weight of 1,000 battles and a civilization teetering on the edge of survival. She wore Earth's crest, a stylized globe encircled by olive branches, on her uniform, and her voice, though calm, echoed with defiance. "We've abided by the compact," Elara declared, her words slicing through the cacophony. "Earth has stayed within its assigned boundaries. We've traded fairly, shared our knowledge, and respected your laws. Yet, despite our compliance, your kind," her eyes swept the room, "have encroached on what we hold most sacred. Our children." A hush fell over the hall. Even the energy fields of the council seemed to flicker with tension. "The Arindran Collective," she continued, "has been abducting human children from frontier colonies. We have evidence, timestamps, genetic scans, even survivor accounts. This isn't an isolated incident. It's systemic, and it must stop." A guttural voice emerged from the shadows, reverberating through the chamber. High Speaker Valkar of the Arindran Collective leaned forward, his massive form covered in chitinous armor. His 6 glowing eyes fixed on Elara with disdain. "The collective acts in the interest of science and progress," Valkar said. "Your offspring are unique, genetically diverse, physically adaptable, mentally resilient. They possess traits that could benefit all sentient life. Your sentimentality blinds you to the greater good." Elara's fists clenched at her sides, but her voice remained steady. "You speak of progress, but what you mean is exploitation. You're not advancing science, you're committing atrocities. Humans won't stand for it." Valkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "And what will you do? Your kind is but a speck in the vastness of the cosmos. Your fleets are small, your technology's primitive. You barely hold your own against the hostile forces on your borders. You cannot hope to challenge the collective." Elara straightened, her chin lifting defiantly. "We're not alone. The Council exists to protect all species, to ensure peace and balance. If the Council allows this violation to continue, then it has failed its purpose." The chamber erupted into murmurs, the delegates exchanging wary glances. The Council members conferred silently, their energy veils flickering like storm clouds. Finally, the central figure of the Council, known only as the Arbiter, raised a hand. "The Council has deliberated," the Arbiter intoned, their voice neither male nor female, but a harmonious blend of many tones. "The evidence presented by humanity is compelling. The actions of the Arindran Collective violate the principles of the Galactic Compact. We decree that all experimentation on human offspring must cease immediately, and all abductees must be returned. Failure to comply will result in sanctions." Elara allowed herself a brief moment of relief. But Valkar's eyes narrowed, and his mandibles twitched in a way that sent a chill down her spine. The relief was short-lived. A month after the Council's ruling, reports began to trickle in. Another colony had gone silent, Calypso 7, a small settlement on the edge of human-controlled space. Elara sat in the briefing room aboard the Nova Striker, her heart pounding as the images flashed on the screen. Empty streets, blood-stained walls, abandoned toys. "This was no raid," said Commander Darius Kane, his deep voice grim. He was a towering figure, his face marked by scars from countless battles. "This was a message. Do we have survivors?" Elara asked, her voice tight. "Just one," Darius replied, tapping the console. The screen shifted to show a young girl no older than 8, sitting in a medbay. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. Elara felt a wave of nausea. "What did they do to her?" "Initial scans show no physical harm," Darius said. "But mentally, she's not responding. It's like they took something from her." Elara's mind raced. The Council's decree had been clear, but the collective had ignored it. Worse, they had escalated. This wasn't just defiance, it was an act of war. "We have to retaliate," Darius said, his fists clenched. "They're testing us, seeing how far they can push. If we don't respond, they'll keep taking more." Elara hesitated. Humanity's military forces were stretched thin, and the Arindran Collective was one of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. A full-scale conflict could doom them. But the thought of doing nothing, of letting the collective prey on their children, was unbearable. "Get me the fleet commanders," she said finally. "If the Council won't enforce its own ruling, then we'll take matters into our own hands." The Nova Striker emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Calypso system, flanked by a dozen warships. It wasn't much, a patchwork fleet cobbled together from Earth's colonies and allies, but it was all they had. On the bridge, Ilara stood beside Darius, her eyes fixed on the shimmering blue planet below. "Scanners are picking up Irindran signatures," said Lieutenant Mira Chin, the ship's sensor officer. "They're stationed near the southern hemisphere." Ilara nodded. "Bring us into orbit. Activate stealth protocols. Let's see what they're hiding." As the fleet moved into position, the tension on the bridge was palpable. Everyone knew the risks, they were outgunned and outmatched. But they also knew what was at stake. "Commander, we've got visuals," Mira said, her voice shaking. The main screen displayed a massive Irindran facility, its spires piercing the planet's atmosphere like jagged claws. Swarms of smaller ships buzzed around it, and columns of smoke rose from nearby settlements. "It's a harvesting operation," Darius growled. "They're rounding up civilians?" Ilara's stomach churned. "How many? Hundreds? Maybe more." The room fell silent. The collective wasn't just targeting frontier colonies, they were systematically abducting humans, defying the Council's ruling with impunity. Ilara gripped the edge of the console, her voice hardening. "Prepare the fleet. We're going in." The battle began with precision strikes. The Nova Striker led the charge, its railguns tearing through the collective's smaller ships. The rest of the fleet followed, unleashing a torrent of missiles and energy blasts. The Irindrans responded quickly, their warships descending like predators. The void was soon filled with the chaos of combat, flashes of light, explosions and the deafening roar of engines. Ilara directed the fleet from the command center, her mind working furiously to outmaneuver the enemy. "Focus fire on their carriers," she ordered. "If we can take them out, we cut off their reinforcements." Darius relayed the orders, his voice booming across the comms. The fleet's coordinated assault began to turn the tide, but the Irindrans were relentless. "They're targeting the civilian shelters," Mira reported, panic in her voice. Ilara's blood ran cold. "Deploy ground teams immediately. We can't let them take any more." As dropships descended toward the planet's surface, Ilara knew this was only the beginning. The collective had crossed a line and humanity would make them pay for it. But deep down she also knew the cost would be high. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for their future. For their children. For their very existence. And they would not back down. The aftermath of the skirmish on Calypso 7 echoed through the ranks of humanity's patchwork fleet. Though they had managed to repel the initial Irindran forces, the battle had left scars, both physical and emotional. On board the Nova Striker, the mood was heavy, and the cost of their defiance weighed on every soul aboard. Ilara Thorne stood in the dimly lit war room, staring at a holographic display of the Irindran facility they had discovered on the planet's surface. The flickering blue lines outlined its grotesque spires and fortified walls, the heart of the collective's operation in the sector. Around her, officers murmured updates, but Ilara's mind was elsewhere, focused on the survivors rescued during the raid. "They weren't just abducting," she finally said, breaking the tense silence. "They were altering them." Commander Darius Kane, his broad frame leaning against the edge of the table, frowned. "You're certain?" he asked, his voice low. Ilara nodded grimly. "The medbay scans confirm it. Neural implants. Genetic tampering. They were trying to reprogram the children's minds, enhance their physical traits. It's as if they were building soldiers, twisting them into something inhuman." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Darius slammed his fist onto the table. "They're breeding weapons out of our own people. This is more than an abduction campaign. It's a full-scale assault on our identity. And the Council does nothing," Lieutenant Mira Chen added bitterly. "Their sanctions mean nothing if the collective refuses to abide by them." Ilara's jaw tightened. "Then it's up to us to make them listen. We need to hit the Irindrans where it hurts and we need to do it now." The decision to strike the facility on Calypso 7 was met with mixed emotions. While many in the fleet supported the plan, there were murmurs of dissent among the ranks. Some feared retaliation, others doubted their chances against a faction as powerful as the Irindrans. Ilara convened a fleet-wide broadcast, standing tall in the center of the command deck. Her face was illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic monitors, and her voice carried the weight of conviction. "People of Earth," she began, her tone steady and commanding, "we stand at a crossroads. The Irindran collective has stolen from us, not just our children but our future. They seek to break us, to turn our own against us. But they've underestimated humanity. She paused, letting her words sink in. We've survived against impossible odds before. We've endured wars, famine, and disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. And every time we've risen stronger. This time is no different. We will not let them take what is ours. We will fight, not because we're stronger but because we have no choice. Because we must. The broadcast ended to a resounding wave of cheers and renewed determination. Morale, though fragile, began to stabilize. And preparations for the assault moved into high gear. On the surface of Calypso 7, the Irindran facility buzzed with activity. The air shimmered with the hum of energy fields, and the ground trembled under the weight of massive transport ships ferrying their grotesque cargo, rows upon rows of stasis pods containing abducted humans, mostly children. Inside one of the holding chambers, young Lila, a survivor from the earlier raid, huddled in a corner, her knees drawn to her chest. The other children around her stared blankly, their eyes devoid of life. Whatever the Irindrans had done to them, it had stripped them of their humanity, leaving only fragments of their former selves. Lila, however, was different. Though terrified, her mind remained sharp. She had escaped the Irindrans once before, and she clung to the hope that her rescuers would return. That her people wouldn't abandon her. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the chamber. Lila looked up, her heart pounding. Outside, the lights dimmed, and the rhythmic hum of the facility faltered. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to hope. The assault began with a surgical strike. The Nova Striker and its accompanying fleet unleashed a barrage of kinetic and energy weapons, targeting the facility's defenses. The sky above Calypso 7 lit up with explosions, and the ground quaked under the weight of the bombardment. Irindran ships scrambled to respond, but the human fleet moved with precision, exploiting every weakness in their formation. On the ground, strike teams deployed from dropships, moving swiftly through the facility's outer defenses. Ilara led the charge, her rifle slung over her shoulder and her eyes scanning the battlefield. Darius was at her side, his massive frame cutting through enemy ranks like a battering ram. Together they pushed deeper into the facility, their objective clear: disable the facility's central power core and rescue the captives. As they advanced, the resistance grew fiercer. Irindran soldiers, tall, insectoid figures clad in chitinous armor, emerged in waves, their weapons crackling with energy. The humans fought back with everything they had, their makeshift armor and scavenged weapons no match for the Irindrans' advanced technology. But they compensated with grit, determination, and a refusal to back down. Thorn, we've located the stasis chambers. Myra's voice crackled over the comms. But they're heavily guarded. We'll need reinforcements. Ilara gritted her teeth. Hold your position. We're on our way. The stasis chamber was a sprawling room filled with towering columns of pods, each one containing a child. Ilara's heart sank as she scanned the rows, her anger boiling over. This wasn't just an attack, it was genocide. Darius's voice brought her back to the present. Contacts inbound. Looks like they're sending everything they've got. Ilara turned to her team. Hold the line. We need to get those pods out of here. As the Irindrans poured into the chamber, the humans dug in, their weapons blazing. The battle was brutal, the air thick with smoke and the screams of the wounded. But through it all, Ilara pressed forward, determined to save as many lives as possible. Finally, they reached the central console. Mira worked quickly, bypassing the Irindran encryption and initiating the release sequence. One by one, the pods began to open and the children inside began to stir. Lila was among them. She blinked groggily as the pod's lid hissed open, her eyes adjusting to the harsh light. When she saw Ilara, a spark of recognition lit up her face. You came back, she whispered. Ilara knelt beside her, her voice gentle but firm. We never leave our own behind. As the last of the pods were evacuated, the team prepared to withdraw. But the Irindrans weren't finished. A towering figure emerged from the shadows, its chitinous armor gleaming with an eerie light. It was an overseer, a high-ranking commander of the collective. You dare defy us? The overseer hissed, its voice a guttural growl. Your defiance will cost you everything. Ilara raised her rifle, her expression unyielding. We're done letting you take from us. The overseer lunged, its claws slashing through the air. Ilara and her team fought with everything they had, the battle raging with ferocity. But for every strike the overseer landed, the humans struck back harder. In the end, it was Darius who delivered the killing blow, driving a blade deep into the overseer's chest. As the creature collapsed, The humans seized their opportunity, retreating to their dropships with the rescued children in tow. As the fleet regrouped in orbit, Ilara stood on the bridge of the Nova Striker, gazing out at the planet below. The battle had been costly, but they had won. And more importantly, they had sent a message. Humanity was no longer a species to be trifled with. But deep down, Ilara knew the war was far from over. The collective wouldn't take this defeat lightly. And the next time they came, they wouldn't hold back. "We'll be ready," she whispered, her resolve hardening. "Whatever it takes, we'll protect our own." The celebration aboard the Nova Striker was subdued. Although the fleet had secured the rescued children and dealt a critical blow to the Irindran Collective's operations on Calypso 7, the cost of the victory weighed heavily. Dozens of human ships were damaged or destroyed, and hundreds of soldiers had fallen in battle. The children, though saved, were far from whole. Many were traumatized and some bore the marks of the Irindran's horrific experiments. Ilara Thorne walked the length of the med bay, her boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, occupied by the rescued children who remained unconscious, their fragile bodies recovering from months of abuse. Medical teams worked tirelessly to stabilize the survivors, but the scars, both physical and psychological, would take much longer to heal. "How are they?" Ilara asked, stopping at the bedside of young Lila, who had finally fallen into a fitful sleep. Dr. Harlow, the fleet's chief medical officer, sighed and rubbed his temples. "Stable for now. But whatever the Irindrans did to them, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. Their neural pathways have been tampered with, likely to suppress certain emotional responses and enhance cognitive functions. It's as if they were trying to turn these kids into something other than human." Ilara's fists clenched. "They won't get away with it. Not after this." Dr. Harlow hesitated. "Commander Thorne, there's something else. Lila, she's exhibiting unusual brain activity. Increased synaptic firing rates, almost like she's processing data at an accelerated level. It's not natural." Ilara frowned. "Are you saying they succeeded? That she's changed?" "I don't know," Harlow admitted. "But whatever they've done, it's irreversible. She's not the same as she was before." Ilara felt a chill creep down her spine. The Irindrans hadn't just taken their children, they had turned them into weapons. And that thought terrified her more than anything else. In the war room, the fleet's senior officers gathered around a holographic display of the galaxy. The Irindran Collective's territories loomed ominously in red, sprawling across several sectors. The recent strike on Calypso 7 had been a tactical victory, but it had also painted a target on humanity's back. Commander Darius Kane leaned over the table, his expression grim. "We've intercepted communications from the Collective. They're mobilizing. That facility on Calypso 7 was just one piece of their operation. They've got others, dozens, maybe hundreds, spread across their territory." Lieutenant Mira Chin nodded, her fingers flying across the console as she brought up additional data. "Our intelligence suggests they're doubling down. Reinforcing their borders, expanding their fleets. They're preparing for war." Ilara took a deep breath, the weight of leadership pressing down on her. "We can't let them rebuild. If we give them time, they'll come back stronger, and the next time, we might not be able to stop them." Darius folded his arms. "So what's the plan? Hit them before they can hit us?" Ilara nodded. "We take the fight to them. Find their facilities, disrupt their operations, and make it clear that humanity won't be preyed upon." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Lieutenant Chen spoke up hesitantly. "With all due respect, Commander, our resources are stretched thin. We've lost ships and personnel. If we go on the offensive, we risk spreading ourselves too far." Ilara met her gaze. "I know the risks, but doing nothing is a death sentence. If we let the Collective regroup, they'll wipe us out. We have to show them that humanity isn't weak, that we won't stand by while they take our children." The room fell silent. Finally, Darius nodded. "Then we hit them where it hurts." The fleet's next target was a research station on the edge of Irindran space, a facility suspected of housing information about their abduction program. The operation was risky, penetrating deep into enemy territory with limited resources, but Ilara knew it was their best chance to gain the upper hand. As the Nova Striker prepared for the mission, Ilara visited the ship's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a vast and unforgiving void. She found solace in their quiet beauty, even as the storm of war raged around her. Darius joined her, his heavy footsteps echoing in the quiet space. "You're awfully calm for someone about to lead a suicide mission." Ilara managed a faint smile. I learned a long time ago that fear doesn't get you anywhere. You face it or you let it consume you. Darius leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the stars. You really think we can win this? That we can stand up to the collective? Ilara's expression hardened. We don't have a choice. It's not about winning, it's about surviving. About protecting what's left of us. Darius nodded, his jaw set. Then let's make sure they remember who we are. The attack on the Arindran research station was swift and brutal. The fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons blazing as they tore through the station's defenses. The collective's response was immediate, but the humans fought with a desperation born of necessity. Inside the station, Ilara led a strike team through the labyrinthine corridors, their objective clear: retrieve the data and destroy the facility. The air was thick with tension as they moved, their footsteps echoing against the metal walls. Commander, we've got hostiles ahead, Myra's voice crackled over the comms. Ilara signaled for her team to take cover. As the Arindran soldiers rounded the corner, a fierce firefight erupted. The humans fought with precision and determination, their makeshift weapons cutting down the enemy one by one. Finally, they reached the central data core. Mira worked quickly, her fingers dancing across the console as she downloaded the files. I've got it, she said, her voice triumphant. But we've got company, lots of it. Ilara activated her comms. Darius, we need extraction. Now. As the team fought their way back to the extraction point, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Arindrans were fighting harder than usual, as if they were protecting something more than just a facility. When they finally made it back to the dropship, Mira handed Ilara a data pad. You need to see this. Ilara's eyes scanned the screen, her heart sinking as the truth became clear. The files revealed the full extent of the Arindrans' plans. They weren't just abducting children, they were creating a new generation of hybrids, blending human resilience with Arindran physiology. And they were doing it on a scale far larger than anyone had imagined. This isn't just about us, Ilara said, her voice trembling. If they succeed, they'll use those hybrids to dominate the entire galaxy. Darius's expression darkened. Then we stop them. Whatever it takes. Ilara nodded, her resolve hardening. The war had just begun and humanity's fight for survival was far from over. But as long as there was even a sliver of hope, they would keep fighting. For their children. For their future. For humanity itself. The fleet was battered, its numbers dwindling, but the spirit of humanity burned brighter than ever. The revelations from the Arindran research station had left no room for doubt. Humanity was not merely fighting for its survival but for the survival of countless species across the galaxy. The Arindran Collective's hybridization program was an existential threat to freedom itself. In the shadow of a dying star, the human fleet regrouped. The data extracted from the station pointed to a single location: Zerath Prime, the nerve center of the Arindran operation. Hidden deep within an asteroid field, it was a fortress bristling with defenses, but it was also their Achilles heel. If humanity could destroy Zerath Prime, they would cripple the Collective's ability to continue their hybrid program. On the command deck of the Nova Striker, Commander Ilara Thorne stood before her officers, her presence commanding yet calm. Her voice carried through the room like a clarion call. We've come farther than anyone thought possible. We've bled, we've lost, and we've sacrificed. But every life we've saved, every blow we've struck, has led us to this moment. Zerath Prime is their heart, and if we destroy it, we end their plans for good. They took our children. They tried to twist them into something unrecognizable. Today we take them back, and remind the galaxy who humanity truly is. The officers nodded, their determination palpable. There was no more fear, no more hesitation. They had all accepted that this was a fight they might not return from. But the stakes were too great to falter. The fleet plunged into the Zerath asteroid field under cover of darkness, their ships weaving through the labyrinth of debris as Arindran patrols scanned for intruders. Every pilot and gunner knew their roles. Every maneuver had been rehearsed in endless simulations. It was a symphony of precision and purpose. The first shots rang out as the human fleet emerged from the asteroid cover, their weapons blazing. The Arindran defenses responded immediately, massive turrets pivoting to unleash a torrent of energy fire. The battle was chaos, explosions illuminating the darkness as ships weaved and darted, each trying to outmaneuver the other. Ilara was in the thick of it, coordinating the fleet's movements with unyielding focus. Darius, lead the second wing and draw their fire. Mira, take your team to disable those turrets. We need an opening to get our bombers through. "Aye, Commander," Darius's voice boomed over the comms. "Let's show them what we're made of." As the battle raged, Myra's strike team infiltrated the station, slipping past the chaos to plant charges on key systems. Meanwhile, the fleet's bombers moved into position, their payloads primed to strike at Zerath Prime's core. But the Arindrans weren't going down without a fight. Inside Zerath Prime, Ilara led a small team toward the control center, navigating the station's labyrinthine corridors. The Arindrans had fortified their stronghold well, but the humans' determination outmatched even their advanced defenses. "Commander, we're running out of time," Myra's voice crackled over the comms. "Charges are set, but they've reinforced the core. We'll need to manually trigger the detonation." Ilara didn't hesitate. "Understood. We'll cover you." The team pressed on, their weapons cutting through waves of Arindran soldiers. Ilara's mind raced, every decision a calculated risk. Finally they reached the core, a massive pulsating structure that seemed almost alive. Mira and her engineers worked quickly, placing the final charges and sinking them to a remote detonator. "Done," Mira said, wiping sweat from her brow. "Now we just need to get out of here." But before they could retreat, the room shuddered as a towering figure entered. A new overseer, larger and more menacing than any they had faced before. Its chitinous armor glowed with an eerie, pulsating light, and its voice reverberated through the chamber. "You've come far," it hissed. "But this ends now. Your species is an aberration, clinging to a feudal hope. You will be erased." Ilara stepped forward, her rifle raised. "We're not the ones who will be erased." The final battle was ferocious. The overseer's strength was overwhelming, its claws tearing through steel and flesh alike. But humanity's resilience shone through. Ilara's team fought with everything they had, each member giving their all to hold the line. In the end, it was Ilara who struck the final blow, driving a plasma blade deep into the overseer's core. As it collapsed, its glowing body flickering, she felt a surge of triumph and sorrow for the lives already lost. The fleet was already retreating as Ilara's team made it back to their dropship. Mira activated the detonator, and a series of explosions rocked the station. From the Nova Striker, the crew watched as Zerath Prime disintegrated, its core erupting in a brilliant explosion that consumed the surrounding asteroids. Cheers erupted across the comms, but Ilara's face remained stoic. They had won, but the victory had come at a price. Scores of ships had been lost, and many brave souls had given their lives to make this moment possible. In the days that followed, the fleet limped back to safer territory. The destruction of Zerath Prime was a turning point. Without it, the Arindran Collective's hybridization program was crippled. But the scars of the war remained, etched into every survivor. Ilara stood on the observation deck watching the stars. Darius joined her, his arm in a sling but his spirit unbroken. "We did it," he said, his voice quiet. Ilara nodded. "We did. But it's not over. The collective is still out there." Darius grinned. "Let them come. They've learned that humanity isn't easy prey." Ilara smiled faintly. "We've bought ourselves time. Time to rebuild, to grow stronger. For our children. For the future." As the Nova Striker drifted through the stars, Ilara allowed herself a moment of peace. They had faced the unthinkable and survived. Humanity's flame, though battered, still burned brightly. And as long as it did, they would fight. Because Earth's children deserved a future. And humanity would ensure they had one, no matter the cost.